Our region's business is sponsored by PNC for the Achiever in You.
25 years ago, barriers began to come down for Americans with disabilities. Signed into law on July 26, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act protects the civil rights of 57 million Americans with disabilities. Among the pioneers who helped to make it happen was our own native son, Dick Thornburgh, the former governor of Pennsylvania. It was a big step forward, but there is still plenty of work to be done. Governor Thornburgh is back with us today, and so is Joyce Bender, President and CEO of Bender Consulting Services, who works to create employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. And welcome back to both of you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, before we plunge into this issue, Governor, I do have to ask you, I asked Bill Peduto in the first segment about the passing of Mrs. Hillman. I know she was a personal friend as well as a political colleague of yours for many, many years. A big loss, I'm sure.
It was a big loss. There's only one Elsie Hillman. She really was a giant in this community in so many ways, not just the politics, but embodying what we know as civic leadership. She was involved in crucial issues and exhibited the kind of leadership that we all pine for in our community. So we'll miss her very much.
Yeah.
One of a kind.
She was that, although the spirit of civic leadership is a characteristic of our region, it seems.
It is indeed. I'm not sure that Elsie Hillman would have found the kind of environment in other communities that she found here in Pittsburgh. I mean, begin with the conferences, as you well know. But she had a knack for leadership that was silent but effective. Although she could be unsilent sometimes too. A great dear lady, and we're going to miss her terribly.
Yeah, I think I've seen both those sides over the years. Well, speaking of leadership and our region's role in it, let's go back 25 years to 1990 and to the creation of the American. You were Attorney General of the United States at the time. How did you become so involved with this issue?
I was indeed. Well, it was a remarkable coincidence. It enabled me to pursue two items at the same time. One was my personal interest in the ADA because of our son Peter, who was seriously injured in an automobile accident at the age of 4 months. But beyond that was that President George H.W. Bush asked me to be his point man for the administration's effort to get the ADA passed. And you know, Bill, what's somewhat sobering is to think that that's really the last piece of domestic legislation to be passed with bipartisan support.
Wow, hard to believe.
Ted Kennedy on one side, Bob Dole on the other, both exerting themselves on behalf of the 57 million Americans with disabilities rather than looking to petty party interests.
It was a tremendous milestone, and I think people may forget today. You think of the ADA and you think about accommodations in buildings, the curb cuts, the reserved parking spaces. There was a lot more to it, Joyce, in terms of what people with disabilities were denied in this country up until then.
Yes, but before I say that, I just have to tell you what an honor it is to be with this man, because I just want everyone to know they don't realize what a giant he was in enforcing the ADA.
Well, we have a mutual admiration society.
But to answer your question, prior to the ADA, a person in a wheelchair could go into try to go into a movie theater or to a restaurant and be told, you can't come in, you're a fire hazard. A person could be asked on an interview, what is your disability? Tell me what your disability is. Or be required to fill out on an employment application the medication they take, or, you know, do they have a disability? Not to mention, no curb cuts, you know, no captioning. It's always amazing to me that we use a lot of these things and don't realize, oh yeah, that was a result of the ADA.
Well, they're taken for granted. Good, but the bad side of that is that we have a tendency, once the job we think is completed, to rest on our oars, and that job is not completed, and it'd be a serious mistake if this nation were to rest on its oars with simply the observance of the 25th birthday of ADA.
So with our time left, what does need to be done? I think you're right. You look at the visible signs and you check. We've checked that box. Yeah. It's all okay. So what isn't okay right now? What do we need to do to take it to the next level?
I would say the #1 barrier that has to come down is the obstacle to employment. 70% of Americans with disabilities are still, today, not counted in the workforce. And that must be one of the highest goals as we move forward.
Well, it's almost the opposite if you look at workforce participation in general, 70–80%, depending on the age groups. With people with disabilities, it's the exact opposite. 70–80% are not participating.
The highest unemployment of any minority group in America.
And think particularly about our veterans, our wounded warriors who come back after defending our country with a serious physical or mental or emotional disability and can't get the kind of attention focused on their needs that has been traditional in the past. And so hats off to Joyce Bender and her troop. They do a terrific job of educating and promoting and providing a stimulus to American business employers to do their share in helping to close that gap.
Yeah, Joyce, we had you down here, I guess it was last October, talking about this issue, and there have been some new regulatory changes we talked about that you thought were going to be encouraging more employers to take this seriously. Does it seem to be happening?
Yes, since Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act, which actually was put into law over 41 years ago by President Nixon, but just never really enforced. Now, for the first time, affirmative action for Americans with disabilities with an aspirational hiring goal of 7%. So what has that done? Oh my goodness. Companies across the United States, for the first time, are calling saying, we want to meet with you, we need to hire people with disabilities. Federal contractors. This impacts federal contractors and subcontractors.
Well, only a few seconds left, but I do want to mention if companies want to get involved, want to do more, October's a great month to start thinking about it, engaging. A lot coming up.
October every year is National Employment Month. And in October 1st, October 27th, Mark Johnson is speaking at the Thornburg Lecture Series, and Mark is a national disability advocate. That will be wonderful. It's at Pitt. And it's National Disability Mentoring. It's Disability Mentoring Day on a national basis, the third Wednesday of every October. High school students with disabilities, job shadowing for a day, and there will be a big event celebrating that at the Heinz History Center.
Well, Governor, I know there's work to do, but it's got to make you feel good that we've come as far as we have.
Makes me feel good we have people like Joyce Bender out there as advocates. She's done a splendid job, and more power to you, my dear.
All right. Well, thank you both so much, and congratulations on the achievement all those years ago and what we're doing today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in a minute with a few thoughts on civic leadership, our region style, and the loss of a woman who truly set the standard. Stay with us.